Alright, welcome guys. So, this is a video slash stream that I wanted to make in preparation for the big Missed Challenges tournament coming up with the $2,000 prize pool and whatnot. What I'd originally been hoping to do was produce a very lengthy, well thought out PvP beginner's guide series and then announce Missed Challenges on the back of that. But I ran out of time with that. I've actually got tons of scripts and things ready for that series, but the series in its fullness isn't done, and I'm not going to squeeze out 10-ish videos in like 2 days just for the sake of it. So instead, I want to do a brief overview. So this video is for you to watch if you're out of the loop with PvP. If you don't know what's been going on, if you don't know what the builds are, if you don't know how the game is played, that's what this video is for, so that you can come to the tournament tomorrow, and when you hear me saying random words, and you hear my co-caster Roy saying random words referring to skills and stuff, you'll actually understand a bit deeper what's actually happening. So I only anticipate this will take 20 to 30 minutes, but by the end of it, hopefully your eyes will be open to some more stuff, and I'll have more varied and interesting and better produced versions of this going forwards as time goes by. So let's start off. First of all, in Conquest, obviously you get 5 players in your team, and different builds specialize for different things. So this is not universally agreed upon. However, over the past few months, as I've got better at casting, I've developed, well, I and some of the other casters in the area, we've developed some words for the various styles of builds there are. So, first of all, you have damage builds. These are general builds that do pressure, whether that's spiky flat damage, whether that's attritive condition damage, whether that's very bruisery CC oriented damage, whatever it is, just general damage and pressure. These kinds of builds are more generalist in scope. They are not necessarily the fastest rotators, but when they get to a battle, they can be extremely dominant. They're also the kind of builds that could benefit from other people healing them up and giving them pills and giving them support and stuff. So that's one style of build. You see tons of those. There's another type of build which we call support builds. So during Heart of Thorns, that was like Elementalist Tempest. These are people who heal, who provide damage mitigation, who stun break people, who res, who provide stability and blocks and all of that kind of stuff. Currently, there's one very dominant support build in the game. That's the Firebrand. It's several tiers, several echelons higher than other builds in that style, like Ventari Revs and stuff like that. So mostly you see Firebrands. So that's basically the support and the damage together can kind of encompass what you'd consider the team fight. Then there are some other more special builds that are a little bit more specialized. First of all, over here, we have duelists. So a duelist build is one that absolutely specializes in being able to win 1v1s, and also is a build that if it's in a 1v1 and an enemy comes to attack them, it can still survive and escape and, you know, keep itself going. So those are duelists. They're not necessarily very good with AoE. They're not necessarily great in team fights, but they're going to win their 1v1s, okay? And what you tend to find is the duelist builds, they fight very long, hard, slow battles against other duelists on the side nodes. So like a duelist will pick up home or will push to far, and they'll battle it out over neutral nodes or trying to defend their points as best possible. So duelists are things like druids, are things like spellbreakers, and a few other builds are sort of waffling around there. So those are duelists. And then lastly, the last type of build you tend to find would be roamers. So the classic ultimate best roamer unseated king would be like various thief variants. These are very fast builds that can't 1v1, can't really team fight, don't offer massive amounts of support, but they're extremely quick to get around the map, and they can quickly run into a 1v1 scenario, and they can quickly try to slam a kill out, thus snowballing fights to victory. And yeah, they do what is basically called +1ing. They outnumber their opponents by quickly running to a fight, ending that fight quickly, and then running off somewhere else. So they're constantly sprinting around the map. They also have a lot of value in being able to just secure decaps or even full caps when enemies leave their nodes undefended. So that's extremely strong. It's not exclusively a thief role, but Thieves are generally what you'll see at the highest ends. All builds can kind of do all of these to a certain extent. Like, a Thief with Blinding Powder can kind of support and res. A Thief can kind of duel if the matchup is right. A Thief can unload a lot of damage if they're left on the side of a point and get tons of cluster bombs and things down, right? Like, everyone... These aren't hard and fast definitions, but they are fairly descriptive, like, the baseline thing that a build does in Guild Wars 2. And so at the tournament, what you're going to see is when we see the teams load in and we see what their 5 builds are in their composition, we'll analyze them and we'll say we'll actually pull the different players' builds apart and put them into these boxes to see who's fielding what. And that makes it so clear and easy to understand why one team wins and why another one loses. You'll see on the day. It's going to be very cool. So that's just the start. Then, of course, we have the builds themselves. So going back in game now, what I want to do is I will show you right here. I am, by the way, as I make this video for you live, so people can watch me on Twitch. If anyone's in chat right now, I will respond to feedback on that. But basically, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the 9 professions, and I will just tell you guys a little bit about what each of the 9 professions will be seeking to accomplish. Starting off, I guess, with Revenant. And I'll go through like what the meta builds are, what we're likely to see in the tournament. So Rev is not like a super top tier class at the moment. I mean, it depends on your opinion. This is going to be a difficult video for me to make because based on your experience and opinion, you're going to come to very different conclusions about things. But I'm anticipating seeing a few Revs tomorrow, not too many. Now, in terms of specializations, Core Rev is completely off meta and you're unlikely to see. Renegade as well, or Renegade things with Carla and whatnot, they're very off meta and you're very unlikely to see. If you see a Rev, you're probably going to see that they're a Herald, and you're probably going to see that they're a power damage Herald. There are some slight variants involving Jarlis and stuff, and there's some other middle-of-the-road builds, but most will be running a build like this, which is... during the Heart of Thorns days was actually kind of a premium team fighter. It would have a support Tempest with it and it would do a lot of damage. Massive CCs over bodies with staff attacks. So here you got Surge of the Mist. If you ever hear us call about Surge of the Mist, it's a Rev knocking everyone's away from a body. They have big CCs on their Glint ability here. This is called Chaotic Release. They have their Shiro elite, Jade Winds, and then also they have Big Burst. Okay, so they've got Shackling Wave, they've got Death Strike in their ports. Impossible Odds makes them move quickly. Generally, they're just heavy power pressure things. If you've been watching my second channel, Wooden Potatoes 2, Game of the Day, you'll know... I'm going to turn the effects volume down a little bit. You'll know a lot about this build because I've actually been playing it a lot recently competitively and teaching you about it. But yeah, so if you see a Rev, they're probably going to be on this build and well-defined by heavy spike pressure, but they're also quite squishy, okay? So that's Revs. That's really the main variant that you'll see. I was just asking chat why there's a million Revs running around in ranked. I think based on some of the other nerfs, like Rev just feels alright at the moment, and I think if you see good people playing Revs, it inspires you to play them. It's not a terrible class. It could just be the way that the balance is shifted in general and like role models being out there in the community. There you go. So you got Rev. Now let's look at Elementalist. So I will try not to give you a massive history on everything that Ellie has done in the past. Hold on, I'm on the wrong character here. Let's go to actually a PvP character. I'll try not to give you a massive history and rundown on every single build that once upon a time existed. But for the game right now, there's really one type of Ellie you're mostly going to see, and that's going to be Weavers running swords. Weavers running swords are very much in the duelist slot. They're very sustainy. They can bring their health back up. They're very evady. They're very flighty. They're very vulnerable to burst. But this is not the build. You're looking at me running right now. This is a really weird build. But they're actually going to be Weavers running swords, evading a lot and putting out as much pressure as they can. I actually think Condi Sword is the standard that most people run at the moment. I think it's even SD, not necessarily SF. And yeah, you'll find these guys defend their close nodes. And they push to far, and they'll offer some supplementary help on roads and at mid, but mostly they're in that duelist slot. They're reasonably effective. I think opinion of the strength of Weaver has gone up slowly over time, but don't expect too much. I don't value the build that highly. What key cooldowns can I talk about that we'd want to watch for from a Weaver? Maybe not too many. You might see at some point they pop a Tailored Victory, which is when you use all of the different attunements while under the effects of your elite. I'm going to try and get to an enemy through a friggin' waypoint while the elite's up right now. And then what they're going to do is they're going to pop their tailored victory at the end, which does this. It's a huge float. So you might see that. Otherwise, I'm not really sure what crazy things I'll call out. Maybe fire grabs, churning earths, just damage, basically. And yeah, they also run... Okay, here's one thing. Most of them are running Primordial Stance, which is a stance that pulses conditions around them while they're in their 1v1. And so if I see that, or Roy sees that, we'll probably be like, oh god, this is a lot of damage right now. And basically, in the 1v1, it's someone's job to keep away from that while it's ticking, and then go back in afterwards. So yeah, that really encompasses Ellie. There's a very low chance you might find a Staff Ellie or a Fresh Air Ellie, but they're very weak at the moment, and I don't know. If you do, it will be like the lower brackets, the amateur games, and just for funsies. But later on, that's probably any Ellies that you'll see that are really trying. Next on the list is Warrior. So for Warrior, we're going to have a selection of builds, actually, they could play. I'm freaking in... Well, none of my characters are in the PvP lobbies. This is really frustrating. Mostly, you're going to see that they are duelists. They are extremely dominant duelists. It's mostly flat damage you're going to see coming out of them. They'll be running greatswords. They'll be running daggers. They'll be running shields. Some do actually go for axes, funnily enough. Some go very aggressive as well. Here you can see I'm on a really silly aggressive version. But one of the things you'll probably watch out for more than anything else is Rampage. So with Rampage, basically, a rune got removed from the balance recently called Surging, which procced a cool aura whenever you use an elite skill. So there's a lot less reason now for warriors to run Signet of Rage, and this got buffed and changed. It's got much lower cooldown and lower duration now. So Rampage, a lot of warriors will use this. It makes them huge, it makes them big, it makes them mean. They do lots of damage in CC. They blow people up in general with this. They got a throw boulder attack as well. You might find someone snipes an amazing kill with a boulder. That's always a fun one. So yeah, Rampage is something to watch out for. That's a cool moment. And then yeah, just their main mechanic, if you don't know, it's full counter. What this does is it means that the warrior, if they take 0 damage the next time they get attacked, but then they swing like a retaliatory strike out, okay? So there, I full countered this Guardian. We do a ton of damage. We interrupt the Guardian. We take 0 damage from his attack. Most of the time, warriors winning their 1v1s is because they get good full counters. They get a ton of buffs from that if they manage to land them. So yeah, and it looks like this. It's like they have a big bubble that they have around them, and if they get attacked in the middle of it, it's not going to be good for them. So if we're spectating a 1v1 with a warrior, its full counters really are going to be one of the major things. Obviously, there's a ton to talk about, but this is it here for every build. But yeah, so Rampage, full counters. I think that's pretty decisive, pretty inclusive of everything that Spellbreakers do. You'll see a lot of Spellbreakers. They're one of the most premium strong builds out there at the moment, and always exciting to watch. So yeah, you got that. Moving along, we have Druids, another duelist slot right here. This guy in Ratasum, not the list. So Druids, they're going to rely on their CA to resustain their health. There's a lot of different actual choice that you can make as a druid, and depending on what people go for, you might see different stuff. But basically, they pump a ton of might and things on themselves and their pet. They do tons of damage via their pet, really, and the rest of it is they're kiting around, they're staying alive, they're spamming blinds in some cases, they put stealth on themselves, and they just resustain their health. They have reasonable CC as well in terms of, like, as a duelist, they rely on their longbows to use point-blank shot to knock people off of the nodes, and then they can decap them, and that you want to watch out for. They have entangling roots, which they'll proc very frequently to snare people and hold immobilizes. And then obviously that locks someone down for the rest of the team to go in and kill them. This again is not the druid build you're actually looking at right now. In fact, I don't remember the last time I played druid at all. But yeah, you want to watch out for that. You want to watch out for CA. I suppose there's a very rare chance you might see a Spirit of Nature. I doubt that though. Yeah, so Rampages 1 is what most of them run. What really cool cooldown is there to watch for on a druid as we're spectating? What can I imagine myself shouting out? I don't know, like maybe a smoke scale will get a random CC and blow someone up. Or we might see something like that. but or knock someone down at a horrible moment. But mostly it should be pretty understandable what's going on when there's a druid around. They might stealth bodies and res them up. Search and rescue actually is a very important one. So when the druid presses F on a body, they'll get their pet to heal it up as well. And that's like a really, really powerful res. So whenever a druid's in a bigger fight and they're helping their friends out, they can res super fast. And so that's through search and rescue. So if you ever see any quick reses go off or we call search and rescue, that's the ranger's pet resing someone up. So you want to keep an eye out for that. Moving on, after druids, we have Hollow. So Hollow is very strong right now. Kind of a jack of all trades, really. You can consider it a duelist. You can consider it a bit of a team fighter. I wouldn't ever really consider it much of a roamer, actually, or a support. But it's very, very meaty, bruisery, high damage, high sustain. There are a few variants, but largely they rely on spamming lots of protection on themselves and tons of boons. And yeah, they just kind of rip you to pieces, frankly. Some key things to watch out for from them is their elites. Some of them run Mortar. Mortar's actually pretty cool. Mortar being an elite that lets them attack from really, really far range. I'll show you once all these loading screens are gone. Sorry, this video is so loading screen heavy. It would be nice if any of my characters are in the right place. But so some of them run Mortar, which I'll show you. I don't know why sometimes it feels like they take a million years. So they'll basically just like siege like this. They'll drop a ton of fields. But much more likely what you'll see is them running Prime Light Beam. This is actually a Scrapper variant, so let's put Hollow Smith on. So Prime Light Beam is a very cool cooldown to watch. One of my favorite elites in the game. What it does is if they have high heat, it drops a field down. But it laser beams, and anyone caught in it gets blown out, so that knocks bodies away, that knocks reses away and stuff, and it does big, meaty damage. It's also at 1200 range, so like you'll see people hollow snipe people down with Prime Light Beams. Really, really powerful elite, a good one to watch out for. And yeah, if you have high heat, it also paints the ground with a lasting AoE field that keeps ticking damage. So you want to watch that. Everything in Photo Forge is really good. So you've got the Shockwave, the 2 is really cool, the Photon Blitz. All of these are really visual things. They just all do crunching, massive damage. And yeah, they're a dream to spectate, really. They'll boon the hell out of themselves. Another one they might run is the Hard Light Arena, this, which spams boons out on their allies, including Protection, which can then cleanse if they're on a certain variant. So you'll see this come down a lot. Yeah, I think that's all the really big visual stuff from Hollow. Obviously, we could describe every single skill and every single animation, but definitely Prime Light Beam is the big one that I want you guys to watch out for. So, yeah, we got that. You're unlikely to see any scrappers, but if you do, then they'll have their function gyros, rezzing people. You're unlikely to see any core NGs, really. There was an idea, there were some murmurings that maybe there would be when Sanguine Array came into the game, but I don't think you're likely to see them. 99% you're going to see Hollow Smiths. Bizarrely, because of the Hard Light Arena and stuff, Hollow Smith almost can protect just as well as Scrapper, but it's also got all the damage and stuff loaded on it. So, but yeah, that's mostly what you'll see Hollows running around in these. So we've got that. Getting into some of the big classes now with really important stuff to watch. Next on the list is going to be Firebrand. Okay, so Firebrand, well, Guardian, actually. So there's 3 distinct things. I love the balance of Guardian at the moment. It's in a great place. You can see Core Guards, you can see DH to a lesser extent, and then you'll see Firebrand. So the weakest of the 3 is definitely DH. This was very prominent way back when during Heart of Thorns. It was kind of like a good low skill build that did well, but not necessarily at high ends as far as I remember. But yeah, so you might see DHs. If you see them, they might run traps and things, like a Dragon's Maw. Hopefully you guys remember that from Heart of Thorns days. They would have their bows, obviously, that they'd be running with. You're unlikely to see too many, okay? But moving on, we do have Core Guard. I don't actually know what the 3 traits Core Guard runs, but Core Guards run hammers, and they're very bursty, kind of roam-oriented. Well, they'll use Mighty Hammer to burst people. They'll blink into their targets with Judge's Intervention. They'll blow people up with Smite Condition at the same time. They'll run Focus as well. Here, the Focus 5, Shield of Wrath. And they'll, like, slam it all down at once. And they'll just do, like, big, big, big damage to you. they'll like save themselves with renewed focus by invulning and then getting their stuff back up. But this is kind of a squishy build that has heavy burst. And you might well see a lot of these. Like if you pair one of these with another heavy flat burst character, it could be really entertaining. And then lastly, there is Firebrand. So Firebrand is support. It's the main one and only support that you'll see in the game at the moment. So they spam out tons of heals, stability, Aegis, and whatnot. The key cooldowns to watch for are these: the F1, the F2, and the F3. These are tomes that every time you use a skill, it uses up ammo. And then once you run out of ammo, you go on a fairly long cooldown, okay? Same here. So the F3 is like defensive, mitigation oriented. F2 is like restorative oriented, and F1 is like more aggressive, and you won't see them used too much. But Firebrand's like, they have a ton of sustain until it runs out, and then like it ends. But these guys are going to be trying to save their allies at team fights, and the way you'll know if a team's about to lose their team fight quite often is if the Firebrand's like ran out of a lot of his cooldowns. They also have mantras, which don't have very big prominent animations, but have like lots of charges. And if a Firebrand is forced to spend all of their charges, that's really bad as well. You can generally spectate a Firebrand by just looking at cooldowns, right? If you see that a lot of cooldowns are up, and they've still got a lot that they can use, they're probably going to still be in the fight for a while. But the second you see a lot of stuff's on recharge, that's not going to be very good. What else is visual about this? I mean, they just have these massive fields, right? So a lot of this stuff, like this is resistance that they pulse out. Their 5 is actually not a big animation at all, but that puts tons of toughness and protection and stuff on people. Yeah, you generally want to watch this. This is a huge water field that they can drop down, and other people will be able to blast in, like that guy just comboed in it. So yeah, that's Firebrand and Core Guards. You will see a lot of these guys. They're going to be keeping Scourges alive. Okay, so getting towards the end now. I think we have 3 fairly versatile classes. Okay, so first there's Thief. So there are a ton of Thief variants. I think probably of all professions in the game, Thief has the most diversity in terms of like elite specs and how you build stuff. There's a wide variety of Condi variants that you'll see people run. There are Deadeye builds, there are Daredevil builds, there are core builds. Kind of the king, the most prominent one right now, that you'll see most people doing. Obviously, Deadeye's about to have a big rework. So for Deadeye, yeah, there's Deadeye PP, there's Deadeye rifle builds. We're unlikely to see many of them, but they're very spiky. Deadeye PP is very, very good for just like bursting Scourges down. Rifle's very good for that as well. But they're very flighty. If you run like a rifle with a Deadeye, you're actually okay at like 1v1s and things, but you're very like stealth oriented and movement oriented, so you're not necessarily going to hold nodes during it. But yeah, PP Thieves, you're unlikely to see any of this at the high level because it's easily countered and mitigated. But this is generally really good counter to one of the other dominant builds in the game at the moment, Scourge, and it can do other good stuff elsewhere. So yeah, there's Deadeye variants. But the main one you probably want to watch for is SD Core. So there's a free-to-play build, a bit like Core Guardian, where you just run 3 core lines, and you get like steel recharge and you get lots of stuff. Basically, you run Sword, Dagger, Sword, Dagger, and basically play very evasive. This is a roaming playstyle. It will nip around, it will go for +1s, but it's very good at taking boons and punishing boon-heavy enemies, which is good with Firebrand. Firebrand spams out tons of boons. This can kind of punish and steal and take a lot of those with the flanking strikes into Larcenous. So you'll find this variant of Thief a lot. There's also Dagger Pistol Thieves, which do a similar thing. The prominent stuff that you want to watch here is like when they have their Basilisk Venom up. This is a Venom that shares to the allies that applies a stun. And when you watch them in 1v1s and things, you're basically just going to be watching for their evade frames. And especially when the flip over the Larcenous strike lands. That's kind of a fun thing to watch out for. What else do you watch for here? I don't know. You just watch for them being sneaky, taking decaps, stealthing bodies, stuff like that. Not that they'll necessarily run blinding powder and stuff, but that's what you're going to be mostly watching for. There are Condi Thief variants. If there's a Condi Thief on the field, you watch for their Venom, because they're going to like try and blow them up with confusion burst from the steel and like heavy poison stacks coming from the venom at the same time. So if we see any of that, it's not Devourer venom, it's spider venom. So yeah, if you see that, we'll basically, you'll know what builds are in play because of the pre-game lobby. Roy and I on the cast will actually tell you about that. But yeah, in terms of their play style, this is a very roam-oriented thing as well, very squishy. So yeah, I think that there's a lot we could say. We could go on and on and on. If there's anything people feel like I've desperately missed that people are going to want to know about for the tourney, let me know. But yeah, so that's Thief. Very much, they're all really going to be roaming playstyles. You're not going to find any support thieves in the tournament. You're not going to find any major team fighting thieves in the tournament. You're not going to find any duelist thieves. They're mostly going to be rotating around. So then that puts us onto Mesmer. So Mesmer is super dominant at the moment. Mesmer is so dominant that one of the specializations, Chronomancer, is banned from the tourney. Most of what you see in automated tournaments and high-ranked queues and things at the moment is the Chronomancer specialization, because just a couple of months ago, the devs completely reworked Mesmer, and they made it a lot more fun and intuitive, but it's still massively overtuned, and the devs are being very idle on reining it down. It was actually obvious to many of us that Mesmer was going to be OP like long before it really landed. But Chrono is so dominant that it's actually banned from this tourney, which is great because it increases build diversity massively. So you will not find any Chronos. We don't necessarily have to talk about that. But Mesmer is still very, very strong. You will find a lot of Mirages. There are a wide number of Mirage builds. This is an Axe Mirage. This is a heavy Condi Applicator build. Very squishy, very YOLO, but devastating. Probably the highest Condi burst that's in the game. Well, not burst, but it can consistently just keep pulling out so much torment and confusion. It's nuts. So this is one variant. Other variants of Mirage run swords. You'll probably see a lot of those. There are power sword variants. There are Condi sword variants. Sword allows Mirages to move around very quickly. Obviously, they have portals. So this is an extremely important cooldown, guys. You're going to see this. So when I first press portal, it paints the ground with a purple thing. And I get a new skill, which is Portal Exit. I have 1 minute to place the second one, and when I do, it connects the two. And I and any of my team can walk through this. You will find players using this to save one another's lives, to score decaps, to force their opposing team to stay stationary on nodes and do all kinds of nasty stuff. Portal is extremely powerful and on a really low cooldown. If you ever get confused at the big tournament and you're like, how did players move around? It might have been because they used a portal. We'll try and watch for those portals as best as possible. You can save your entire team's life by opening a portal, and then just before they all die, they all run away through it. It's extremely strong. You will find a lot of these. So there's that. What other big stuff would you want to watch out from Mesmer? In the past, I maybe would have said Moa, but we don't really see many Moas being ran at the moment, especially with Chrono off and you can't double the cooldown. I doubt we'll see much of that. They quite often run very bruisery builds, so you may see some Phantasms, like this one here, the Phantasmal Disenchanter. What this does is it rips tons of boons, and if it hits someone with no boons, it does a massive spike of regular damage. I'm not even on a power build right there, and I just did like 10k damage across my 4 targets there, and that was with no crits. It's like extremely devastating. It rips a ton of stuff, so you might want to watch out for Phantasmal Disenchanters. The ambush, if we ever call out a big ambush, that's basically just going to be any super high hitting ability that the Mirage is executing through their Mirage Mirror. Yeah, I think that's most of it. I don't think playing a Mesmer... Well, no, so that's about it, really, for Mesmer. Then next, I think we have one more class, and that's Scourge. So Scourge defines a huge amount of the game at the moment. Yeah, Scourge is the last class. So Scourge is, like, the most raw, understandable damage roll that there is at the moment. It is like pure, unmitigated, crazy AoE condition pressure. Talking about Necromancer in general, nobody really runs core Necromancer, but you might find Reapers. Reapers, they don't have that much respect, but you might find them. They're fun to play. They have reasonable efficacy. Your opinion coming into this video is probably that Reaper's trash and terrible and has never been any good. That couldn't be further from the truth. Since Reaper is no longer a Condi thing like it was during the Heart of Thorns days, it's been retooled to more of a power thing, but it is actually genuinely alright. You might find people giving it a shot, but there's a lot to talk about with Scourge. First of all, they apply massive condition damage through their shades. So when you see these massive AoEs here with these big yellow things and all the crazy visual noise, these are shades. If any enemy stands inside this, they take massive Condi bomb pressure, okay? Necromancers accomplish this mostly through their F abilities, but this one's a really big, powerful one called Desert Shroud. Just pulses out. It basically turns this into a horrible, massive, deadly well, which comes up very, very, very frequently. They can corrupt boons. They can fear like mad. They just do basically huge Condi damage. The other big one here is Ghastly Breach. So this is a huge sand field that does immense burning, torment, and boon corrupt all at once, while buffing the team who's allied to it with might. Ghastly Breach is huge. You're gonna watch for Ghastly Breaches in this tournament. Oh, another really high-powered cooldown is the Warrior's Winds of Disenchantment. They might run that instead of Rampage, which, again, is all about massive boon rip. So, if a Ghastly Breach is called, this is the big damage. You'll see that this gets dropped on downstate bodies. This swings team fights. It's very, very huge. If a Desert Shroud plus a Ghastly Breach goes down together, it's horrible. There's still the wells and stuff, which is classic stuff. So yeah, that's the offensive side. Scourges also put out High Barrier. Some of them you may even find run Sand Flare, and they push a ton of barrier onto their friends. Some Scourges run Sand Swell, which is a mini portal. So they'll come through this, and then they and their allies can port through it. And you'll find like a Firebrand and a Scourge support one another by going through like this. So you want to watch out for those. And the other big thing, okay, is a lot of Scourges run Blood Magic. They don't all, but some of them sacrifice their damage to run Blood Magic. And what they do is, with Blood Magic, when they press this skill here, the Garish Pillar, they trigger a trait called Transfusion, which pulls allied downstate bodies to their location and starts rezzing them. So, not only are they massive damage powerhouses, they also are incredible resurrectors. So, in a team fight, if you hear a Transfuse, or if you hear about Well of Blood, when the Necromancer presses F, they'll drop a Well of Blood, it looks like this, on themselves and the body, and that also reses. So they just have incredible res capacity that, again, even if, like, if a Scourge sees an ally dies, they can drop a Garish Pillar, pluck the body into the Garish Pillar, giving themselves the body might and whatnot, start rezzing in it, and if any enemies try to come in to cleave it down, they're going to get bombed by all the Condis and stuff. So, in general, team fights are dictated by the incredible potency and strength of Scourges paired with Firebrands. Firebrands keeping the Scourges alive, the Scourge is doing crazy damage. And then if you supplement that team fight with like a flat damage dealer, like say a Hollow, like a Jack of all trades kind of Hollow character, or if you dare to run like a Rev, or if you run, classically a lot of people running Chronos and stuff, you can have these incredibly good team fights for the 2v2s, 3v3s, 4v4s, and then you can field like a Roamer and a Duelist on the side points. So, yeah, that's generally the major stuff. That's how team fights feel. That's all of the big animations. I'm just looking at Twitch chat right now. If you guys feel I haven't called out a really important skill that would be important to watch for the tournament tomorrow, let me know. But yeah, that's generally how the game is structured at the moment. Those are the builds. That's how people will be playing. They have 5 slots to pick 5 of these 18 elite specializations. And I've just told you what some of the best ones are, and we'll be seeing the best of them. So, yeah, generally you want to field someone in each of these boxes. Oh. Sorry about that, guys. There we go. You want to field people in generally each of these boxes. So here, this is a game we watched a second ago. You'll see, like, the blue team here in the damage box had a Scourge, and the Scourge was versus a Core Guardian and a Chrono, probably that was. At the mid-fight in general, the blue team was fielding a support to help the Scourge. You guys don't have to worry about the boxes within them too much, but yeah, generally you got damage builds, duelist builds, support builds, and roamers. And hopefully that makes sense. There might be some really wacky off-meta strange stuff that we see tomorrow, and that could be cool as well. But hopefully by the end of this, you understand a little bit more. Remember those skill animations I showed you, and in addition to the commentary we'll provide on the day, I promise you, it will be really easy to watch and understand what's going on. Let me know in the comments if you thought that this helped, and I will see you all very shortly.